Have you ever wondered what really goes on behind the scenes to make your favorite online service, be it like a banking app or maybe an e-commerce platform, not just work, but work reliably, securely, and seamlessly, even when things go totally sideways? Today on the Deep Dive, we're pulling back the curtain on how organizations truly engineer IT services that are, well, fit for purpose and use, and then rigorously protect them from all the unexpected curveballs. We're diving deep into a crucial module from Dr. H.Schuessler's excellent book, Mastering ITIL 4 for Information Systems Professionals, focusing specifically on service design, risk management, and service continuity.
Yeah, and our mission today really is to unpack these 3 critical IT service management practices. We want to show you how they intertwine, how they turn these complex IT challenges into robust, reliable solutions. You'll gain a true shortcut, hopefully, to understanding the blueprints, the safeguards, and the recovery plans that underpin our entire digital world. Knowing these concepts isn't just theory, it's essential for anyone stepping into or already navigating the IT landscape.
Exactly. And for those of you, especially our students listening in from the Dr. Sam Pack College of Business at Tarleton State, who are gearing up for careers in information systems, or maybe you're a professional looking to master the ITIL 4 framework, these insights aren't just important. They're fundamental for thriving in a world that increasingly relies on resilient IT services. Oh, and hey, if you find value in what we're sharing today, please hit that like button, subscribe, and maybe share this deep dive with others who might benefit. Your support really helps us bring more of these conversations to you. All right, let's unpack this. Our journey begins with service design. What does it actually mean to design a service fit for purpose and use, and why is it so, well, non-negotiable?
Basically, service design is all about making sure what you build actually works, not just technically right, but for the people using it, and also that your organization can actually deliver it effectively. It's holistic. You're thinking about everything, the tech, the people, the processes, even your partners and suppliers. And the why? Well, it's pretty simple. A well-executed design process slashes total cost of ownership, it sharpens decision-making, and dramatically boosts service quality. Without proper architecture and controls baked in from day one, services can quickly become costly and unreliable. Think of it like laying a solid foundation for a skyscraper. You wouldn't just wing it, would you?
No. Definitely not. That blueprint analogy really brings it to life. So when we talk about those key elements of the design, what's something that organizations often overlook when they're trying to get this right?
That's a good question. Often overlooked, but absolutely crucial, is the use of service blueprints. These are essentially visual diagrams. They map out all the service components, people, physical or digital tools we sometimes call props, and processes, and they align them directly with customer interactions, the touch points. Imagine, say, an online retail service. The blueprint shows customer actions like browsing or adding to cart, right? And it links those directly to the backstage steps like inventory checks or payment processing. It's all captured in a comprehensive document called the Service Design Package, or SDP, that details how a service is designed, how it's built, tested, and how it's going to be operated throughout its life.
Right, the SDP. And what about the core dimensions designers have to consider? I hear a lot about the 4 Ps and these ilities.
You're spot on. ITIL 4 really emphasizes the 4 Ps. People, thinking about skills, roles, products, the tools, the tech, processes, procedures, policies, and partners, your suppliers, vendors. But beyond those, you have these critical non-functional requirements, often called the ilities. These are super important. They include things like scalability. That's the service's ability to handle growth or peak loads. For instance, choosing a microservices architecture is a common design choice to achieve this. Then there's maintainability, how easy it is to update or repair the service. That's often supported by things like automated testing pipelines. And of course, security, ensuring the service resists unauthorized access while still being available to legitimate users. This involves design choices like encryption, robust identity management. These decisions are absolutely foundational.
Okay, we've covered a lot of the theory there. Now, I'm really curious to see how these design principles actually translate into real-world scenarios. Can you walk us through a couple of examples?
Absolutely. Let's think about a global retail e-commerce platform. A big multinational retailer revamping its online shopping service. They might choose a microservices architecture specifically for scalability. They'd draft a detailed service blueprint mapping every customer action to back-end processes. Capacity management would be involved, provisioning elastic cloud resources for peak seasons like holidays, availability management designs for, say, 99.9% uptime using redundancy. Their service design package, the SDP we mentioned, includes crucial security elements like token-based authentication and compliance with PCI DSS. That's the payment card industry data security standard, vital for handling credit cards securely. This really shows how those 4Ps, DevOps people, cloud products, agile processes, and third-party partners are all coordinated within the design phase.
Wow, yeah, that's a massive undertaking. What about a different kind of industry, maybe something like finance?
Sure. Consider a financial services cloud migration. Let's say a bank is launching a new online loan application service hosted in the cloud. During the design phase, architects define the logical components, customer portal, credit scoring engine, the core database, etc. They create a service blueprint for the entire customer journey. And crucially, for that core loan database, they specify a recovery point objective, an RPO, of maybe 15 minutes. That means they can't afford to lose more than 15 minutes of data. And a recovery time objective, RTO, of perhaps 2 hours, meaning the service absolutely must be back online within 2 hours of failing. Scalability might be handled by auto-scaling containerized services, maintainability through modular code and CI/CD pipelines, security via role-based access control and data encryption at rest and in transit. And importantly, risk management is involved early, flagging potential issues around regulatory compliance and fraud detection that need to be designed for.
Okay, let's try and distill this down for your work in IT for the listener. When you think about service design, what's the single most powerful takeaway message about building a truly resilient, user-centered system?
Beyond just foresight, I think it's about deliberate vulnerability. That sounds counterintuitive, maybe. But true resilience isn't just about building things strong. It's about strategically identifying where and how they might break, and then designing in the specific, elegant recovery mechanisms right from the start. It's foundational, yes, but it's also an exercise in sort of embracing the imperfect and planning for it from the very first line of code or architectural diagram.
That's a great point. Now, no matter how well something is designed, risks are always inherent.
Yeah.
Right? This brings us naturally to the critical practice of risk management.
You're absolutely right. Risk management isn't a separate stage. It's deeply embedded throughout ITIL, especially in service design, but elsewhere too. Its objective is pretty clear: to identify, assess, and control risks. And it does this by analyzing things like asset value, potential threats, existing vulnerabilities, and the controls you have in place. Instead of seeing risk as just an afterthought, effective organizations proactively quantify and manage it. This involves several key activities: establishing the risk context, identifying the risks, analyzing them, often by looking at likelihood multiplied by impact, evaluating them using tools like a risk matrix, and finally deciding how to treat them with mitigation strategies.
Okay, but how do we even begin to identify all those potential pitfalls? Where do you start?
Yeah, that's key. A fantastic proactive technique is threat modeling. There are common frameworks for this, like STRIDE. STRIDE stands for spoofing, tampering, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, and elevation of privilege. So let's take a web application example. Using STRIDE, you'd ask specific questions. Can an attacker spoof a legitimate user session? Or could data be tampered with in transit or at rest? Each question helps uncover potential vulnerabilities and points towards necessary countermeasures, like implementing multi-factor authentication to combat spoofing or using checkstones and encryption to prevent tampering.
Got it. So once we've identified a bunch of threats, how do we prioritize them? Because like you said, not all risks are created equal, right?
Precisely. You can't fix everything at once. That's where a risk assessment matrix comes in handy. It's a standard visual tool, usually a grid. The x-axis typically represents the likelihood or probability of a risk occurring, and the y-axis represents its potential impact. Think financial loss, reputational damage, downtime. The cells in the grid are usually color-coded, maybe red for high risk, yellow for medium, green for low. So a major data breach, for example, which might have a high likelihood and would certainly have a severe impact, would land squarely in that top right red zone. This visual really helps organizations prioritize where to focus their precious mitigation resources.
Makes sense. Beyond identifying and prioritizing, are there established roadmaps or frameworks for managing risk across an organization?
Oh, absolutely. There are several well-established frameworks that guide enterprise risk practices. A big one is the NIST Risk Management Framework, or RMF. It's a very comprehensive 7-step process: prepare, categorize, select, implement, assess, authorize, and monitor. It's quite governance-oriented, focused on integrating security and privacy controls throughout the entire system lifecycle. Then there's the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, or CSF. This one's a bit broader, providing voluntary guidelines structured around 5 core functions: identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. The CSF is really good for improving an organization's overall cyber risk posture, establishing a common language, and measuring maturity.
Okay, and how do those, say, differ from something like the FAIR model? I hear that mentioned too.
That's a great question, because fair factor analysis of information risk is fundamentally different in its approach. While NIST, RMF, and CSF are more process and control oriented, FAIR is a quantitative risk analysis model. It focuses specifically on cyber and operational risk. So while CSF might give you a sort of qualitative scorecard of your controls and posture, FAIR breaks down risk into quantifiable factors, things like the probable frequency of loss events and the potential magnitude of that loss. Its goal is to actually calculate an expected annual loss, often in dollar values. This makes trade-offs really explicit. So organizations often use NIST CSF for broad risk governance and communication, and then might use FAIR for deep dive analyses on specific critical scenarios where really understanding the financial exposure is paramount.
Right, putting a dollar figure on it. Let's see how this plays out. Can you give us some real-world examples of risk management in action?
Sure. Let's imagine a hospital facing a serious ransomware threat. Their IT security team might use Stride to evaluate threats to its electronic health record, the EHR system. They could identify risks like spoofed admin credentials, malware tampering with patient data, or a denial of service attack making the system unavailable. They'd likely quantify the ransomware risk as having a high likelihood and a critical impact, plotting it in that high red zone on their risk matrix. Mitigations would then be prioritized, things like robust segmented backups, network segmentation to limit spread, and a well-rehearsed rapid restore playbook. They'd align these actions with the NIST RMF, categorizing the EHR system as high impact, selecting appropriately stringent controls, and setting up regular monitoring and assessment. They might even perform a FAIR analysis to estimate the potential financial loss from extended downtime or data recovery costs.
Okay, that makes sense for a critical system like an EHR. What about a different kind of risk, maybe involving partners?
Good point. How about a third-party vendor data leak? Let's say a finance company uses a cloud analytics vendor. They need to assess the risk associated with that vendor. They might identify that compromised API keys, for instance, could lead to a leak of sensitive customer financial data processed by the vendor. For this, they might use a threat modeling technique like PASTA, that's Process for Attack Simulation and Threat Analysis. Unlike Stride, which categorizes types of threats, PASTA helps you simulate entire attack paths, starting from an attacker's potential goals and tracing through technical exploits. It's great for visualizing complex scenarios, especially involving third parties. The risk assessment might place a scenario as having, say, moderate probability but high impact, putting it maybe in the mid-red zone of their matrix. Controls would then include things like enforcing least privilege access for the API keys, using a secure token vaulting system, and contractually requiring the vendor to maintain a strong, possibly NIST-aligned security program. Maybe even requiring something like FedRAMP certification, if applicable, which is a U.S. government standard verifying cloud service security. They'd also clearly define their risk appetite for this kind of third-party engagement.
Okay, considering everything we've just uncovered about risk management, for you, the listener, the professional, what's the one critical takeaway here?
I think it's really about being prepared, not just reacting when something bad happens. It's that proactive stance, proactive threat modeling, applying the right risk framework for your situation. These allow you to truly understand, prioritize, and articulate risks effectively. This lets you make informed decisions that protect your organization and its services before a potential disaster strikes. It's really the difference between constantly fighting fires and managing risk strategically and effectively.
Well said. But even with the best design and the most thorough risk mitigation, disruptions can still happen. And that's where service continuity becomes our essential safety net.
That's exactly right. Service continuity planning is all about ensuring that your critical IT services can be restored and can resume functioning after a significant disruption. Within ITIL, this is often handled by IT Service Continuity Management, or ITSCM. It specifically manages the risks that could seriously impact IT services. Its main goal is to design and implement recovery strategies so that the organization can meet its minimum agreed-upon service levels even after a disaster hits. And this IT-focused planning, ITSCM, is a vital component that supports the broader organizational effort of business continuity management, or BCM, which covers the continuity of all critical business functions, not just IT.
So how do organizations figure out what's truly critical, and maybe more importantly, how quickly they actually need to recover those critical services?
Yeah, that's the foundation. The first crucial step is conducting a business impact analysis, or BIA. A BIA essentially predicts the consequences of disruption to business functions and gathers the information needed to develop effective recovery strategies. It examines critical processes, what they do, what they depend on, other processes, IT systems, people, what the impact would be if they stop, and importantly, how long the business can tolerate them being down, or how much data loss is acceptable. For example, a BIA for a bank's online trading system might reveal it must resume operations within 30 minutes of an outage, and that losing more than 15 minutes worth of transaction data is simply unacceptable due to financial and regulatory impacts. This BIA process is what identifies and helps define those key metrics: recovery time objectives, or RPOs, and recovery point objectives, or RPOs.
Okay, RTO and RPO. I hear those terms thrown around a lot. Can you define them a bit more clearly for us?
Of course, they're fundamental. The recovery time objective, RTO, is the maximum acceptable length of time that a system or service can be down after a disruption or disaster occurs. Essentially, it's your target time to get things back up and running. The recovery point objective, RPO on the other hand, is about data loss. It defines the maximum acceptable amount of data loss measured in time. So if your RPO is 1 hour, it means you need to be able to recover data to a point no more than 1 hour before the disruption happened. Think of it this way. The RPO is like deciding how far back you need to rewind your digital recording to recover lost data, while the RTO is how quickly you need to get the player up and running again after, say, a power outage. Setting these RTOs and RPOs based on the BIA is absolutely critical because they directly drive your technical design choices for recovery. For instance, a very low RPO, near zero, might require expensive real-time data replication, whereas a 24-hour RPO might be achievable with just nightly backups.
That makes sense. So once those objectives, RTO and RPO, are set based on the BIA, how does an organization actually put a plan into action and, crucially, make sure it actually works when needed?
Right, having the objectives isn't enough. With RTO and RPO defined, a detailed continuity plan, often called a disaster recovery plan or DRP for the IT side, is developed. This plan includes things like notification and escalation procedures, detailed step-by-step recovery steps for specific systems, inventories of necessary resources, hardware, software, data, personnel, and clear roles and responsibilities for the crisis management team. It might specify recovery strategies like using alternate sites, hot, warm, or cold standbys, or leveraging cloud-based failover capabilities. But here's the key. These plans aren't static documents meant to sit on a shelf. They absolutely must be tested regularly. This can range from tabletop exercises where the team walks through the plan verbally, to full failover drills where systems are actually switched over. And after each test, the plan needs to be updated based on lessons learned. Testing is what verifies that the RTO and RPO objectives are actually achievable in practice and that personnel really understand their roles and responsibilities under pressure. And you mentioned crisis management teams. They play a vital role in deciding when to formally invoke the disaster recovery plan, balancing the severity of the disruption against the cost and impact of activating the plan.
Okay, let's bring this to life again. Can you share a couple of compelling scenarios where continuity planning was put to the test?
Definitely. First, let's take a data center Flint scenario. Imagine a regional bank with its primary data center in a location prone to flooding, but they also have a fully equipped hot standby site elsewhere. When a flood warning came and eventually water entered the primary site, their disaster recovery plan was immediately invoked. Network traffic was rerouted to the hot standby, and critical application servers were spun up there. Their BIA had established an RTO of 4 hours for the core banking application and an RPO of 1 hour for critical transaction data. Because they were using near real-time database replication, they could restore data to within the last, say, 30 minutes before the primary site went offline, easily meeting their RPO. Core banking services resumed fully from the standby site within 3.5 hours, successfully meeting their RTO target. Throughout this, the crisis team managed communications effectively. Interestingly, a post-incident debrief, or a hot wash, revealed that an early warning from an in-building flood sensor actually gave them a crucial 45-minute lead time, which was key in executing the failover smoothly and limiting the overall impact.
That sounds like a textbook recovery. Really well executed. But I imagine even with the best plans, there are always those unexpected gotcha moments or common pitfalls you've seen despite good planning. Any quick war stories from the field?
Oh, absolutely. The single biggest pitfall, honestly, is not testing rigorously or frequently enough. Many organizations invest heavily in creating a plan, maybe even building a recovery site, but then the plan just gathers dust. The first real-world test, or even the first drill in a long time, often reveals forgotten dependencies, outdated contact lists, or simple human errors under pressure. For example, I recall one company that built a really robust technical failover solution, looked great on paper, but nobody had actually confirmed the network firewall rules at the backup site needed for a newly integrated critical third-party application. Come test day, the main systems failed over, but that crucial application couldn't connect outwards. It failed spectacularly because of a single overlooked firewall rule change that hadn't been replicated in the DR environment's configuration. It's exactly why those regular drills simulating real conditions as closely as possible are so incredibly critical.
That's a powerful reminder, definitely. So as we reflect on service continuity, what's the one crucial principle you, the listener, should carry forward to ensure effective recovery when the unexpected inevitably hits?
I'd say it's the principle of constant validation. Defining your RTOs and RPOs based on a solid BIA is just the start. It's necessary, but not sufficient. You must rigorously test your plans, simulate failures, identify the gaps, because there will always be gaps, and then continuously refine those plans and technical solutions based on what you learn. This means you're not just, hoping for the best when things go wrong, but you are actively preparing for the worst, ensuring your organization can genuinely bounce back efficiently and truly meet those critical service commitments you've made.
This has been an absolutely incredible deep dive into 3 distinct, but as we're seeing, deeply connected areas. But what happens when we pull back and look at how service design, risk management, and service continuity really work together? This, I think, is where the magic truly happens.
Precisely. And Dr. Schuessler's book emphasizes this too. These are truly interrelated practices. You can't optimize one in isolation. Service design provides that foundational blueprint, baking in considerations for performance, scalability, maintainability, and security right from the start. Risk management runs in parallel, constantly identifying potential threats using techniques like STRIDE or PASTA, and then using risk matrices and frameworks like NIST or FAIR to prioritize risks and decide on mitigation strategies. These mitigation strategies often become requirements fed back into the service design. And then service continuity planning steps in exactly where risk analysis highlights those potential high-impact, low-probability disasters. It uses the BIA to set those crucial RTOs and RPOs, which then dictates specific design requirements for recovery and redundancy, again, feeding back into service design.
Right. And how do these elements actually influence each other in practice? Can we tie it back to one of those examples?
Yeah, let's think about that fictional Acme Financial Corp mobile banking platform scenario we could imagine. Service design choices, like maybe using a microservices architecture hosted on an auto-scaling cloud platform, directly support the required continuity options. Auto-scaling inherently builds in resilience to load spikes, which helps meet availability goals a continuity concern. The choice of microservices might also make recovery quicker. You might only need to restore specific failed services rather than a whole monolith, potentially improving your RTO. That's a design choice impacting continuity. Similarly, security controls implemented as part of risk management, say, very strict data encryption and access controls directly impact how the service is designed and also potentially its maintainability. Maybe those stringent controls add complexity to the update process. That's a trade-off between risk mitigation and maintainability, decided during design. The overall message, the big takeaway, is crystal clear. Mastering how these concepts interplay helps you align the technical design of your IT services with vital business needs, things like regulatory compliance, customer expectations for reliability, and also achieve those crucial resilience goals, like meeting uptime SLAs and being truly prepared for crises.
Yeah, the real takeaway here seems to be that you can't truly excel at one of these design, risk, or continuity without deeply considering the others. They're like interlocking pieces of a puzzle that form that complete picture of robust, resilient IT service delivery. And understanding that synergy gives you a huge advantage in your career.
Absolutely. Understanding service design, risk management, and service continuity isn't just about passing an exam or knowing the theory. It's fundamentally about building and maintaining the reliable, secure, and resilient digital services that we all depend on every single day in today's world.
And as we wrap up this deep dive and thinking about the future, considering how rapidly technology evolves and, let's face it, new threats constantly emerge, what is one emerging technology or maybe a trend that you believe will most significantly challenge or perhaps enhance an organization's ability to effectively manage service design, risk, and continuity in the next 5 years? And maybe what steps might you take now to prepare for that? We'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Share them in the comments below. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this deep dive if you found it valuable. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next one.